Chapter 1. The Bronze Doors. At this quiet edge of the evening, when the last warmth of the day lingers without insisting on being noticed, you find yourself standing still upon a broad stone threshold, the ground beneath your feet smoothed by centuries of passing steps, and the air around you softened by the slow descent of dusk. A moment when the world seems neither awake nor asleep, but resting gently between the two. The great Library of Alexandria rises before you without spectacle, not demanding attention, not announcing itself loudly, but simply existing with a calm certainty, as though it has always been here and always will be, its presence as steady and untroubled as the horizon itself, and the sky above it fading gradually from pale gold into a muted lavender, the colours blending without effort or sharp distinction. A coolness drifts in from the nearby Mediterranean, subtle and clean, carrying with it the faint scent of salt and distant water, not strong enough to distract, only present enough to be noticed if one were already inclined towards stillness. The kind of scent that seems to slow the breath without instruction, reminding the body that it is safe to soften, safe to linger. Before you stand the doors. They are enormous yet quiet. Their scale not intimidating but grounding, each one formed from thick sheets of aged bronze that catch what little light remains and hold it without reflecting it sharply, the metal absorbing dusk rather than shining against it, their surfaces worn smooth in some places and faintly uneven in others, bearing the evidence of time not as damage, but as patience. The bronze is cool to the eye even before it is cool to the touch, its colour deep and muted, somewhere between earth and shadow, with tones that shift gently as the light continues to dim, revealing traces of darker seams, softer highlights, and the barely perceptible marks left by hands long forgotten, hands that once rested here without hurry, just as you do now. As you look more closely, you begin to notice the texture of the metal itself, the way it seems almost soft despite its weight. The surface neither polished nor rough, but somewhere in between, as though the bronze has learned over centuries how to meet the hand without resistance, offering itself as something steady and unchanging beneath wandering fingertips. There are faint lines etched into the doors, not decorative in any obvious sense, but practical, deliberate. Their patterns subtle enough that they do not pull the mind forward, only invite it to settle. The lines curving gently, intersecting occasionally, then continuing on without urgency, like thoughts that drift and dissolve before they fully form. The bronze holds the day's remaining warmth in a restrained way, releasing it slowly into the cooling air. And if you imagine placing your palm against it, you can almost feel that quiet exchange of temperature, the metal neither cold nor warm, simply present, as though it exists outside the ordinary concerns of sensation. Here and there, the surface darkens where the metal has aged more deeply, the patina forming naturally over time, creating soft variations in tone that resemble shadows cast by passing clouds. Though no clouds move now, and no sound interrupts the stillness, except the distant rhythmic suggestion of water far beyond the walls. The doors do not gleam, they do not beckon, they wait. Their hinges, barely visible at the edges, are thick and solid, set deep into the stone that frames them, suggesting movement that is possible but never rushed, motion that happens only when it is meant to, without force or effort, as though the doors themselves understand the value of moving slowly. The weight of them is implied rather than announced, a heaviness that feels reassuring rather than burdensome, a reminder that some things are meant to remain in place until the moment arrives naturally, without being summoned or urged forward. You notice how the bronze seems to quiet the space around it, how even the air feels slower here, thicker, as though time itself has decided to pause out of respect, stretching this moment longer than it needs to be, allowing you to stand without expectation, without task, without the need to proceed. The stone walls surrounding the doors are pale and worn, but your attention continues to return to the bronze, to its calm endurance, to the way it absorbs the fading light and offers nothing in return except steadiness, as if it has been practicing this patience for centuries, waiting only to be noticed again. As dusk deepens, the metal darkens further, the last traces of warmth slipping quietly away, and the world grows more hushed. The distant sea now only a memory of sound, rather than a present one. The air cool against your skin, encouraging stillness without command. And then, without warning, but also without surprise, the doors begin to move. There is no sound, no creak of hinge or scrape of metal, only a gradual, almost imperceptible shift. The bronze responding as though it has decided, on its own, that now is the appropriate moment, each door easing inward with unhurried grace, revealing a narrow seam of darkness between them. The opening widens slowly, the interior beyond unlit and quiet. A long hallway stretching inward, its details hidden by shadow, offering no invitation beyond its simple existence. And as the doors continue their silent movement, the world behind you fades gently away, leaving only the calm certainty of what lies ahead. Chapter 2. The Great Hall of Pillars. As the bronze doors complete their slow, silent swing behind you, the world outside seems to fall away without resistance, as though it has simply exhaled and released you into a different register of time. And you find yourself standing just inside the threshold, not yet moving forward, not yet committed to anything beyond being here, in the first wide breath of interior darkness, where the air changes immediately and completely, and where the body notices the shift before the mind can name it. The night beyond the walls has its own softness, its own mild humidity, the lingering warmth of Egyptian dusk, and the faint closeness of air that has held sunlight all day. But here, within the library, the temperature becomes something else entirely, something steadier, something almost geological, as if the building has been quietly collecting coolness for centuries and is now offering it to you in a calm, unquestioning way, a tomb-like freshness that touches your skin and settles into your breath, easing the lungs into a slower rhythm, as though you have stepped into a chamber shaped not only by stone, but by stillness itself. The coolness is not harsh, not sharp, not startling, and yet it is immediate, as if the marble has been waiting just behind the doors to receive you, to surround you, to hold you, and you feel the air against your cheeks and the backs of your hands, the gentle withdrawal of warmth from your body, not as a loss, but as a quiet invitation to become less alert, less upright, less prepared, and more simply present. Standing within a monumental interior where temperature does not fluctuate with the whims of weather, but remains calm and ancient, consistent as limestone, patient as time. Ahead of you, the hall opens outward and upward, vast in a way that does not demand awe, only recognition. A wide expanse lined with hundreds of columns that appear at first like pale shapes in the dimness. Then, as your eyes adjust, like an ordered forest of white marble rising from the floor in long disciplined rows, each pillar spaced with deliberate care, repeating the same calm form again and again, the rhythm of their presence as steady as a slow heartbeat, each one rising into the darkness above until the tops vanish, swallowed by shadow, as though the ceiling is so high it has ceased to be an object and has become only absence. The pillars do not feel decorative. They feel structural. They feel necessary. They feel as though they belong to the earth itself, extracted from mountains and carried here to become a kind of permanent thought, a monumental grammar of stone that speaks in repetition and restraint. And as you stand at the beginning of this hall, you sense the scale of it, not by measuring it, but by how small your own breath seems within it, how easily your presence is absorbed into the vast quiet, how quickly you understand that the hall does not respond to you, does not notice you, does not shift to accommodate you, but simply continues to be what it is, ancient, calm, and complete. The air smells faintly of minerals and dust, a dry, clean scent that suggests limestone and old stone warmed long ago, a smell with no sweetness and no decay, only the neutral honesty of a place built for study and silence. And somewhere beneath it you can sense, like a distant memory, the salt of the sea you carried in with you. But even that begins to fade, diluted by the interior's cool breath, replaced by the marble's quiet authority. It is the silence that arrives most fully. Outside, even at dusk, there is always movement and sound. Distant voices, wind through narrow streets, the hush of water against shore. But inside this hall, the silence has a different texture, almost physical, almost architectural, as if it has been laid carefully between the pillars like invisible fabric, stretched taut from column to column, held in place by the monumental arrangement of stone, a silence that is not merely the absence of sound, but a presence in itself, attentive and still. A silence that does not feel empty but full of the possibility of thought, full of the weight of unspoken words, full of the slow patience of recorded knowledge resting somewhere deeper within the library. The marble underfoot is smooth and cool, its surface lightly worn by time, the kind of wear that does not damage, but polishes gently, as though countless careful footsteps have passed through without hurry. And you can imagine those steps, not as crowds, not as noise, but as quiet individuals moving with respect, leaving behind nothing but the faintest softening of stone. Your eyes drift to the nearest pillars, drawn not by brightness, but by detail, by the subtle complexity within their pale surfaces, because the marble is not plain, not blank, not a simple white, but filled with delicate veins that move through it, like frozen rivers, pale grey and faint gold. Occasional threads of deeper ash, lines that curve and wander with slow intention, as if the stone once held flowing water and then, at some unimaginable moment, decided to stop it forever, capturing its movement mid-drift, preserving it as quiet pattern. The veins do not shout. They do not demand interpretation. They simply exist as evidence that even stone has a history, even stone remembers motion, and you find yourself looking longer than you expect, following one thin line as it travels upward, branching subtly, thinning and thickening like a river seen from far above. A river made still, its course locked in place, its current translated into mineral, and you notice that no two pillars share exactly the same map of veins, no two carry the same frozen rivers, each column holding its own quiet geography, its own secret record of pressure and time. In one pillar, the veins appear as soft smoke caught beneath ice, broad and gentle, as though the marble once breathed and then fell asleep. In another, the veins are sharper, more defined, like thin lightning pressed into the stone and then softened over centuries, their edges blurred by the steady darkness. In another still, a faint line of warmer colour runs through the white, almost honeyed, a subtle thread that catches what little light exists in the hall and seems to glow without moving, like a remembered ember. You could spend a long time with this, and it would not feel like time spent, because the hall encourages lingering, invites the mind to slow down, to rest its attention on something quiet and intricate, something that offers detail without urgency. And the longer you look, the more the marble seems to offer, not through change, but through your own gradual noticing. The way a calm surface reveals depth only when you stop demanding it. Above, the darkness is deep and patient, an obsidian kind of shadow that does not threaten, only conceals. And you imagine the ceiling far overhead, supported by the forest of pillars, but so distant it may as well be another night sky. A second dusk turned inward, and the height of it makes you feel quietly small, not diminished, but gently unburdened, as though the hall is large enough to carry whatever you brought with you, large enough to hold your thoughts without requiring you to hold them tightly yourself. Between some of the pillars stand statues. They are arranged with the same careful discipline as the columns, spaced so that they do not crowd the hall. And as your eyes adjust, you begin to see them more clearly. Monumental figures carved from pale stone, perhaps limestone in some places, perhaps marble in others, their surfaces catching faint glimmers of light and returning it softly, their faces calm, their expressions neither stern nor kind, simply composed, as though their work is done, and now they stand only as guardians of quiet. These statues are larger than life, larger than any single person needs to be, and yet they do not feel exaggerated, only proportionate to the hall itself, as if the space asked for them, and they answered by becoming monumental, towering scholars with draped robes carved into still folds, hands resting on scrolls or tablets, or placed gently against their chests, or folded in a manner that suggests contemplation rather than power. You feel tiny beside them, not because they loom aggressively, but because they are so calm in their enormity, so steady in their posture, so willing to remain motionless for as long as required. And you sense that they have stood here through countless nights, countless seasons, countless shifts of empire and weather, their gaze fixed not on you, not on anything in particular, but on the idea of knowledge itself, on the quiet act of recording and preserving, on the long patience of scholarship. In the dimness, their eyes seem carved from shadow, their features are softened by time. Their presence is heavy yet gentle, like a thought that has been held for a long time and no longer needs to prove itself. Between them, the pillars continue in long rows, repeating, the same pale uprights rising into shadow, and the repetition becomes soothing, almost hypnotic, because it suggests that nothing sudden will happen here, nothing abrupt, nothing sharp, only continuation, only stillness, only the slow certainty of stone doing what stone does, holding space, holding silence, holding the world's quiet work. If you listen closely, you notice how your own breathing behaves in this place, how the inhale becomes slightly slower, the exhale slightly longer, as if the air itself encourages the body to rest, and you might even hear the faintest whisper of your breath returning to you, softened by distance, absorbed by the hall's volume. And then, in that wide quiet, a sound occurs. Not close, not loud, not disruptive. A single water drop, somewhere far away, falling from an unseen place and landing on stone. The sound is small, almost delicate, and yet the hall receives it completely, allowing it to travel outward. The tiny impact unfolding into a gentle echo that moves between pillars, slipping into the spaces between marble and air, repeating faintly as it goes, each repetition softer than the last, until it dissolves into the silence again, not abruptly, but gradually, like a ripple fading on a dark pool. The silence does not break. It remains intact. It simply allows the sound to pass through it, and then closes gently behind it, restoring itself without effort. You might shift your weight slightly, the smallest movement of your foot on stone, and even that produces a soft sound, a quiet contact between sole and marble, and the hall responds with the same patient acoustics. The faint footstep rising, travelling, echoing once or twice, and then thinning until it is gone, leaving behind the same monumental stillness as before. It is almost comforting, the way sound behaves here, as though the hall is teaching you that nothing needs to be loud, that even the smallest sound can be heard and then released, and that silence is not something to fear, but something to return to. You stand for a while, letting your eyes follow the lines of pillars into the darkness, letting your mind rest on the frozen rivers within the marble, letting your ears hold the idea of that single drop of water, that small echo dissolving, and you begin to sense that the hall is not asking you to hurry, not asking you to do anything quickly, only inviting you to move when you are ready, and to move slowly. Somewhere ahead, deeper within the library, there is a direction that feels subtly implied, not marked by signs or voices, but by the gentle logic of the space, the way the rows of pillars seem to guide the body forward, the way the statues stand like quiet companions along a path, the way the hall itself seems to open toward an inner destination. You think of the scriptorium, the writing room, not as a place of activity, but as a place of quiet labor, of careful hands, of ink and reed pens, of parchment waiting patiently to receive words, and the thought of it does not create excitement, only a soft intention, a slow pull forward. So, with no sudden shift, with no sharp decision, you begin to walk. One slow step, then another, your footfalls gentle on the marble floor, each sound rising briefly into the hall's vast acoustics, echoing softly, and then dissolving again into the stillness, while the monumental pillars remain steady on either side, their frozen rivers climbing upward into darkness, and the statues of ancient scholars watch without watching, calm and silent, as you move glacially deeper toward the scriptorium. Chapter 3. The Scriptorium. The walk from the great hall is unhurried, almost ceremonial in its slowness, and each step you take feels less like traveling from one place to another and more like easing deeper into a quieter layer of the same monumental stillness, as though the library is not a series of rooms, but a single continuous interior night, made of marble, limestone, and shadow. And as you move, the air remains cool and steady, the kind of cool that does not fluctuate, that does not surprise, that simply holds the body in a calmer temperature so the mind can loosen its grip without needing permission. The scriptorium receives you without announcement. You pass through a narrower opening, and the space changes shape, becoming long and slender, a corridor of careful work, a room that feels designed for focus rather than grandeur, though even here the scale is larger than ordinary, the ceiling still high, the walls still ancient, and yet the atmosphere is more intimate, as if the library has leaned closer to itself, lowering its voice to a hush that is not secrecy, only respect. Wooden desks line the room in measured order, each one angled, slanted surfaces meant to cradle scrolls and sheets, the wood dark with age, smoothed by use, edges softened by countless hands resting where hands naturally rest, the grain visible where the lamplight reaches it, the colour deep like old walnut, and the faint scent of it present beneath everything else. A dry, clean, quietly resinous smell that blends with dust and oil, and the patient breath of paper. A few oil lamps flicker along the length of the room, not bright enough to fully banish shadow, only steady enough to make a small island of light wherever they stand, and the flames move gently, not dancing, not flaring, simply trembling with the slightest shift of air, casting long shadows that stretch across the desks and along the floor. Shadows that do not feel ominous, only elongated, like slow thoughts reaching out and then settling back again. The light is warm where it lands, and the darkness remains cool where it holds. And together they create a quiet rhythm of visibility and concealment, so that your eyes are never overwhelmed by detail, never urged to take everything in at once, and instead are guided naturally toward whatever is nearest, whatever is simplest, whatever is calm enough to hold your attention without pulling it forward too quickly. Somewhere in the room, not close and not far, there is the suggestion of work. Not bustling work, not hurried work, only the quiet presence of writing. At first, you hear almost nothing, only the steady hush of the room itself, that soft interior silence that seems to sit on the surfaces like dust. But then, as you stand still and allow your hearing to widen, you begin to notice a faint sound, a subtle, repeating texture in the air, as delicate as a whisper, as small as a thread being drawn slowly through cloth. It is the sound of a reed pen moving across papyrus, a gentle scratch, not sharp, not harsh, but dry and soft, like a whisper that has learned to become a sound. A quiet scratch that rises and falls with a steady pace, the way waves might rise and fall against shore if the sea itself had decided to speak only in murmurs. And you can hear that the sound is not made by force, but by consistency, by a hand that knows what it is doing and does not need to prove it. Scratch. A pause that's not empty, only measured. Scratch again. And beneath it, the faint shush of the room swallowing the sound and returning it softened, so that even the writing feels wrapped in stillness, the way a candle flame is wrapped in glass, protected from drafts, allowed to remain steady. The desks hold papyrus in pale sandy sheets, scrolls and lengths of woven reed fibers laid flat. Their surfaces slightly uneven, not rough enough to resist, only textured enough to be felt. The papyrus carrying a pattern of delicate lines where the reeds overlap, pressed and dried, creating a subtle grid that is visible when the lamplight touches it at an angle, like the faint imprint of fabric on skin after resting too long. The color of the papyrus is gentle and dry, a muted beige, the shade of sun-warmed sand that has cooled after dusk. And in that color, there is something calming, because it is neither bright nor dark, neither stark nor vivid, only neutral, only ready, only waiting to receive whatever the pen will place upon it. You imagine running a fingertip lightly across the surface and feeling the fine ridges of the fibers, the slight resistance, the quiet rasp of texture that would answer your touch without changing shape. The papyrus firm but not rigid, flexible but not soft. A material made to hold words without demanding attention, made to endure, made to be carried, rolled, unrolled, read, and stored again. The ink is present too, even before you see it clearly. It has a smell, subtle but unmistakable once noticed, an earthy scent that suggests soot and charred wood. The dry memory of fire transformed into a dark liquid, and it mingles with the warm oil of the lamps so that the room smells like quiet industry, like a place where nothing is produced loudly, only steadily, a place where creation happens in slow repetition rather than in bursts. When you finally see the ink on a page, it is glossy at first, wet and dark, catching the lamplight and holding it in a thin sheen, so that the freshly written lines look almost like obsidian laid gently on sand, black and reflective for a moment, then gradually matte as they dry, the shine fading slowly, the letters settling into the papyrus fibers, as if sinking into their proper place. There is something soothing about that transformation, the way the ink moves from wet to dry without drama, without a noticeable change. Just a gradual shift from gleam to calm, from a small reflective surface to a quiet mark, stable and finished. A record that will not move again once it has been placed. Somewhere near one of the desks, you sense an imaginary scribe at work. Not a figure demanding to be seen. Only a presence implied by motion and sound. A person seated with posture relaxed but purposeful. Shoulders not tense, breath steady. Hands moving with a practiced economy. Never wasted, never hurried. The motion repeats in a gentle cycle. A hand lifts the calamus slightly. It moves to the inkwell. Dip. A small, quiet touch into the dark liquid. Careful and unspilled. And then the pen lifts again, and there is a pause. Brief and unremarkable. Just long enough for a drop to settle back into the well, and then the pen returns to the page. Scratch. A slow line. Another. The sound is soft, a whisper of contact, and each stroke seems to carry the same calm intention, as though writing here is not a task but a rhythm. Not a performance but a practice. Not an act of urgency but a form of steady breathing. Dip, scratch, shush. The room accepts it all. The scribe's breath is quiet enough to be imagined rather than heard, but you feel its steadiness. The weight would rise and fall without being forced. The inhale aligning with the hand's lift. The exhale aligning with the pen's return to the page, so that the body and the writing become one slow metronome, an internal tempo that does not speed up, does not slow down, only continues. A page is filled not by excitement, but by persistence. A line becomes another line, a word becomes another word, and the sound continues, delicate and repetitive, a lullaby made of labor. The kind of lullaby that does not sing, only scratches softly in the background, reassuring the mind that something is being done steadily, that there is structure, that there is order, that there is a calm path forward made from small repeated motions. The oil lamps flicker again, and the shadows on the walls stretch and soften, long shapes sliding slightly as the flame trembles, and then settling back into place. And you notice how the room is full of long, quiet diagonals, the slanted desks, the angled light, the elongated shadows, the scrolls resting at a tilt, the very posture of writing leaning forward just enough to focus, but not enough to strain. In the lamplight, the wood of the desks shows its own grain, lines that resemble the veins in marble, but warmer, more living, the wood remembering the tree it once was. And you think of how the library holds so many different kinds of memory, stone memory, and wood memory, and ink memory. The record of water in marble, the record of growth in timber, the record of fire in ink, all of it gathered here and made quiet. If you listen again, you can hear more than one pen. Perhaps another desk farther down the room holds another steady hand. Scratch. A pause. Scratch. Not synchronized, not chaotic, simply coexisting, like distant rainfall where drops land at their own pace. Each sound separate, each sound small, and yet together forming a gentle texture that fills the scriptorium with rhythmic creation. A soft layer of noise so subtle, it almost becomes silence again. Rustle. A very faint movement of papyrus as a page is adjusted, shifted, smoothed, the fibers responding with a dry whisper. Dip. A pen returns to ink. Flow. Not a dramatic flow, only the suggestion of it. The idea of liquid moving through reed and onto page. A controlled flow guided by a hand that has done this many times. A flow that is never rushed, never spilled, never wasted. The scribe's focus is complete but unforced. The kind of focus that does not clench. The kind that allows the mind to rest inside a single task. And you realize that this is what makes the room feel so calm. Not only the darkness and the lamps and the materials, but the attitude of the work itself. The way writing here is done as if time is abundant, as if there is no deadline, as if the only requirement is to continue, slowly, quietly, faithfully. And in that presence, you feel your own thoughts begin to settle. There is no need to analyze, no need to anticipate, no need to decide. You can simply stand near the edge of the room and let the sound of writing wash over you in its gentle repetitions, letting each scratch fade into the shush of the air, letting each dip be followed by the soft return to page, letting the smell of ink and oil and wood and dust become familiar, like a quiet room you have known before. The papyrus stacks at the desks look pale and calm, scrolls rolled neatly, others unrolled and weighted lightly, so they do not curl back into themselves, and you imagine the slight resistance of the fibers under the pen's tip, the way the reed would catch gently at times, not enough to interrupt, only enough to make the sound slightly textured. Scratch, scratch with tiny variations, the smallest audible proof that the writing is real. You might notice too that the ink is not a perfect black in all lights, sometimes appearing deep brown near the edges where it thins, sometimes appearing almost blue-black where it gathers more densely. A darkness that changes only because light changes, and the lamps continue to flicker, the shadows continuing to stretch, the room continuing to hold its rhythm. Monumental silence remains just beyond the edges of the writing sounds, surrounding them like a vast sea surrounding a small boat, so that even this creation feels suspended inside stillness, protected by it. And you understand that the library is not only a place for knowledge, but a place for the pace at which knowledge is made, a pace that is slow enough to be humane, slow enough to be sustainable, slow enough to let the body remain calm while the work continues. Eventually, without any obvious reason, you sense that you are meant to move onward. Not because the scriptorium pushes you away, but because the library gently draws you deeper, and you begin to shift your weight, and your own footstep makes the softest sound on the floor. A quiet tap that echoes faintly, and then dissolves, absorbed into the room's hush without disturbance. You take one slow step, then another, careful not to rush, letting your movement remain glacial, letting the writing sounds continue behind you, still present, still steady, still scratching softly like a whisper. And as you walk, you pass more desks, more scrolls, more lamps, the smell of ink lingering, the warm light receding and returning in small pools. Toward the far end of the room, the air changes almost imperceptibly, carrying a faint new suggestion, paper and parchment, and perhaps something older, a dry, dusty mineral scent, like limestone shelves, in a separate chamber. And you find yourself thinking of maps, not as adventure, not as journey, but as quiet diagrams, careful lines on pale surfaces, the measured representation of coastlines and rivers and borders, a kind of calm geometry. So you continue, step by slow step, leaving the rhythmic creation of the scriptorium behind you without severing it, as if its sounds remain in the air even after you pass, scratch and shush and rustle fading gently into silence, and you move toward the next space, the Hall of Maps, where the library's quiet attention will take a new form, and where you will remain, as always, unhurried, small within the monumental calm. Chapter 4. The Hall of Maps. The passage opens into a circular room, and the change in shape is felt before it is fully seen. The way the body notices openness before the eyes have time to take it in, as if the space itself has widened its breadth to receive you, and you step forward into a chamber that curves around you in a complete unbroken horizon. A room without corners, without edges that insist, only a smooth, encompassing arc that holds you at its quiet center. The walls rise all around, draped in massive linen maps of the known world, their pale surfaces stretched carefully and evenly, each one secured with patient precision so that the fabric lies flat, neither sagging nor tight. A series of vast continuous fields of ink and fibre that circle the room like a calm, terrestrial sea. Coastlines and meridians rendered in measured lines that do not rush, that do not exaggerate, that simply state where land has been observed and named. Above, the ceiling curves upward into a dome, and the colour deepens as it rises, moving from shadowed blue near the walls into a profound indigo overhead. A night sky hue that feels both infinite and close, like dusk suspended in a single moment. And across that indigo surface, gold leaf stars are scattered with deliberate restraint, each one catching the dim light of the lamps below and returning it softly. Not as sparkle, not as flash, but as a steady, muted glow. A constellation of quiet points that seem to breathe in and out with the room. The air here feels thinner, cooler, as though altitude has been introduced without effort. A mountain clarity that lightens the chest and lengthens the breath, and you notice the subtle ease of inhaling, the way the lungs open a fraction more fully, the way the exhale drifts out a fraction longer, and the body responds by loosening its grip on whatever it has been holding, as if the room has quietly adjusted the pressure of the world. The maps themselves invite your attention without pulling it too quickly. Their linen surfaces a soft, natural cream, the weave visible upon closer looking. Threads crossing threads in a steady pattern that speaks of patience and craft. And the ink upon them has aged into a gentle spectrum of browns and charcoals. Lines that remain clear but no longer sharp, softened by time in a way that makes them easier to rest the eyes upon. You follow one coastline as it curves along the fabric, a line that suggests shore meeting sea, its shape neither dramatic nor exacting, only faithful. And you sense the scale of it not by measuring distances, but by noticing how long your gaze can travel without interruption. How the land continues to unfold along the wall, turning, narrowing, widening again. The horizon bending gently around the circular room as if the world itself has been wrapped into this calm enclosure. At the edges of each map, the ink thins and fades, the known giving way to the unknown without alarm, without warning signs or harsh demarcation. Just a gradual softening where detail releases itself, and the linen returns to its own pale quiet. And in that fading, there is peace. A sense that it is acceptable not to know everything, that beyond the last named place, there is not danger, only space, only possibility held gently at the margins. Between sections of map stand instruments of measurement and wonder, ancient brass globes resting in low cradles, their surfaces burnished smooth by time and touch, lines etched into them with careful geometry, latitudes and longitudes, meridians meeting at poles, each intersection a small, calm declaration that the world can be observed, can be traced, can be contemplated without being conquered. Nearby, bronze astrolabes hang or rest upon stands, their circular forms echoing the shape of the room. Layers of finely cut metal overlapping with deliberate complexity, rings within rings, plates within plates, each piece aligned to the movement of stars and sky. And though their purpose is intricate, their presence is soothing, a reminder that understanding can be approached through quiet attention rather than urgency. If you imagine touching one, you can feel the coolness of the metal beneath your fingertips, smooth and steady, the brass holding the room's cool air within itself, offering a surface that does not resist, does not warm too quickly, only remains as it is, solid and calm. A tactile anchor amid the vastness suggested by the maps and the dome above. The ceiling draws the eye upward again, and the indigo deepens as you look. The stars arranged in familiar constellations, their patterns faint but legible, lines implied rather than drawn. the mind connecting points gently without effort. And in that quiet recognition, you feel a subtle awe, not the kind that overwhelms, but the kind that settles. The realization that the sky has always been larger than any single story, and that this largeness can be held without fear. The gold leaf catches a flicker of lamplight and releases it, a soft pulse of warmth against the blue, and the effect is rhythmic, like a slow breath expanding and contracting. The room seeming to inhale as the light brightens, exhale as it dims, and your own breathing finds itself quietly matching that tempo, the chest rising and falling in a calm, unforced pattern. Around the room, the lamps are placed low and sparingly, their light directed upward just enough to kiss the maps and the dome, leaving the floor in gentle shadow, and the effect is one of floating, as though the walls and ceiling exist in a separate layer from your feet. The known world and the night sky hovering together above a darker grounded base. You walk slowly along the curve of the room, and the perspective shifts with each step, the maps sliding past in a continuous panorama, continents expanding and contracting as they move from center to periphery, the horizon always present, always bending, and the scale of it begins to register not as something you must grasp, but as something that can hold you. Here, grand scale does not diminish the self, it relieves it. The realization arrives quietly, that you are small, yes, but safely so, nested within a world that has room for your breath, your pace, your unhurried movement, and the thought is not heavy, only lightening, like setting down a burden you didn't know you were carrying. At one point, a map depicts familiar seas and lands with confident lines, and at another, the ink thins into suggestion, a few strokes hinting at coast or current before dissolving into linen, and you linger there, at that boundary, noticing how the unknown is rendered not as void, but as softness, a place where the mapmaker chose to stop pressing ink into fiber, to let the material speak for itself. There is mystery here, but it is a gentle mystery, one that invites rest rather than pursuit. And you feel the peace of it settling into your shoulders. The idea that not everything needs to be charted tonight, that some edges are meant to remain open. The air remains cool and clear, the mountain-like thinness giving the sense that the room sits closer to the sky than the earth, and each breath feels slightly lighter, slightly more spacious, as if the lungs are borrowing altitude from the dome above, and the body responds with ease, the jaw loosening, the brow smoothing, the stance becoming less guarded. You pause beneath a section of the ceiling where a constellation arcs gracefully. The stars aligned in a pattern that suggests navigation, orientation, the ancient human desire to understand direction, and you feel the quiet continuity of it. The same sky mapped above, the same world mapped around. Knowledge arranged not to impress but to comfort. The brass globes rest nearby, their weight implied rather than asserted, and you imagine the slow turning of one, the world rotating beneath a steady hand, continents passing through light and shadow, a full cycle completed without hurry, the idea of time stretching outward rather than pressing inward. As you continue along the curve, the scent of the room shifts almost imperceptibly, the cool clarity giving way to something warmer beneath it, a resinous sweetness that begins to thread through the air. Subtle at first, then more present, and you recognize the approach of cedar, wood that has held warmth and memory for centuries, wood that stores scent the way stone stores coolness. Ahead, the circular room opens toward an adjoining passage, and along that path you can see the cedar shelves beginning to rise, their color rich and deep, a contrast to the pale linen and indigo sky, and the smell grows heavier and warmer as you near, grounding after the expansive calm of maps and stars. You take a few final steps within the Hall of Maps, letting the grand scale settle fully, letting the infinite sky above and the measured world around complete their quiet work upon you. And then you turn gently toward the shelves, toward the warmth of wood and the promise of stored knowledge resting in patient order. With each slow step toward the cedar, the air thickens just enough to feel held, the scent wrapping softly around you, and the vastness behind you does not disappear. It remains, integrated, a calm awareness that you carry forward as you move on, unhurried, balanced, and ready to rest within whatever comes next. Chapter 5. The Cedar Shelves. As you move beyond the open sweep of the Hall of Maps, the air begins to change again, not abruptly, not sharply, but with the quiet certainty of a shift that has been waiting for you. And with each slow step forward, the atmosphere grows warmer, denser, as though the library itself has drawn you inward toward its heart, into a place where time does not echo outward into the sky, but settles downward into wood and fiber and breath. The walls here are cedar, dark, aromatic cedar, rising floor to ceiling in long, continuous shelves that curve gently along the passage. The wood aged to a deep, chocolate brown richness, smooth and lustrous where centuries of air and touch have softened its surface. The grain visible beneath the lamplight, like slow, patient waves, frozen in amber motion. The scent arrives before you fully register the space. Warm, resinous, earthy, a living fragrance that carries both sweetness and depth. Cedar resin mingling with the faint trace of old sap, dry bark, and something quietly honeyed beneath it all, as though the wood itself remembers the forests it once stood in, and releases that memory slowly, molecule by molecule, into the air. It is a scent that grounds immediately, not heavy, not cloying, but steady, enveloping, and calm. The kind of smell that settles low in the body, softening the belly, loosening the chest, and encouraging the breath to drop deeper without being instructed to do so. The cedar shelves stretch endlessly in both directions, broken only by small, precise cubbies, each one holding papyrus scrolls carefully tucked away. Thousands upon thousands of them, resting horizontally in their quiet sanctuaries, their forms uniform yet subtly varied. The ends of the scrolls wrapped in fine linen that has yellowed gently with age, its fibers softened into a pale, creamy tone like sun-warmed cloth. Many of the scrolls are sealed with beeswax. You can smell it beneath the cedar. A faint sweetness threading through the resin, warm and familiar, like honey remembered rather than tasted. The beeswax holding the scent of flowers long gone. Fields long quiet. Summers distilled into a thin, protective seal that has done its work faithfully for centuries. The wax has darkened with time, shifting from pale gold to a deeper amber, its surface smooth and slightly uneven, catching the lamplight with a muted glow. And you imagine how it would feel beneath your fingertip. Firm, yet faintly yielding, cool at first, then warming almost immediately, releasing its scent a little more fully when touched. The scrolls rest here not as clutter, not as burden, but as companions. 10,000 voices, perhaps more, held in silence, their presence creating a palpable weight in the room, a thickness of quiet that presses gently inward, not suffocating, but comforting, like a warm blanket laid across the shoulders, a silence that is full rather than empty, dense rather than void. It is the silence of paper, of knowledge stored rather than spoken, of words that have already been written and no longer need to move. You feel it immediately, that this silence is different from the monumental stillness of stone halls or the expansive hush of mapped skies. This silence is intimate, padded, close. It absorbs sound rather than reflecting it. Even your breath seems to soften here, its edges blurred by the layers of papyrus, linen, and wood. Dust motes float in the lamplight, slow and deliberate, not as something dirty or neglected, but as fine gold particles suspended in time, drifting lazily through the air like the visible weight of a history itself, each mote a tiny fragment of fiber or wood or wax, lifted and held by currents too gentle to feel. They shimmer faintly as they move, catching the warm light and releasing it again, and you watch them without urgency, noticing how they rise, pause, fall, and rise again. A quiet choreography that mirrors breath, mirrors thought, mirrors the slow rhythm of the library's inner life. The cedar shelves feel ancient and alive all at once. You notice how the wood has aged not into brittleness, but into resilience, its surface polished by time into something almost soft-looking, darkened like well-tempered chocolate, rich and reassuring. The edges rounded slightly where hands may once have brushed against them, where sleeves may have passed, where caretakers moved with reverence and routine. The smell grows warmer the longer you stand here. Cedar, amber, beeswax, a hint of dried linen. Together they form a sanctuary scent, one that feels safe and enclosed, one that belongs to preservation and care rather than display. And you realize that this place was not built to impress the outside world, but to protect what mattered quietly, patiently, without needing acknowledgement. You walk slowly along the shelves, your steps nearly soundless on the floor. And as you pass, the scrolls remain undisturbed, content in their stillness, the linen wraps holding them snugly, the wax seals intact, each scroll complete in itself, waiting without expectation. There is something deeply soothing about this abundance, not the abundance of excess or noise, but the abundance of presence, the knowledge that there is more here than could ever be taken in at once, and therefore no pressure to take in anything at all, no urgency to choose, no demand to consume or understand. Everything is already here. Nothing is asking you to hurry. The air feels thicker now, weighted with scent and quiet, and yet your body feels lighter within it, paradoxically weightless, as though the room is carrying something for you, holding it so you do not have to. You might notice how your shoulders drop a little, how your jaw relaxes, how your thoughts, which may have been moving quickly before, begin to space themselves out, drifting more slowly, like the dust motes, rising and falling without insistence. This is the scent of time, not time rushing, not time pressing, but time settled, time layered gently upon itself, century after century, until it became something you can smell, something you can breathe in, something that rests on the skin like warmth rather than weight. The cedar shelves do not end abruptly. They curve and continue, guiding you deeper into the archives, and the light remains low and steady. Lamps placed with care so that no area is fully bright and no area completely dark. Everything held in a warm, even dimness that encourages lingering rather than inspection. You feel held here, not watched, not judged, simply allowed to be small and present among great quantities of preserved thought. Eventually, as you move along, you notice a subtle change ahead, not in scent, not in sound, but in form. Between two long stretches of shelving, there is a small wooden door, much smaller than the grand doors you passed earlier, unassuming, easy to miss if you were not already moving slowly. It is made of the same cedar as the shelves, but lighter in tone, less darkened by time, its surface smooth, its grain gentle, its handle worn to a soft sheen by use, as though it has been opened quietly many times. The door does not call to you. It does not glow. It simply exists. And yet, standing here in the deep archives, surrounded by the warm silence of paper and wood, You sense that it leads somewhere different, somewhere open, somewhere touched by air rather than enclosed by shelves. You do not reach for it yet. You simply notice it. And in that noticing, something inside you settles further, comforted by the idea that beyond this sanctuary of stored time, there is another space waiting, patient and calm, ready when you are. For now, you remain among the cedar shelves, breathing in the resinous warmth, wrapped in the silence of 10,000 scrolls, held by the scent of time itself, resting without effort, without demand, exactly where you are. Chapter 6. The Secret Courtyard. The small wooden door opens without sound, yielding easily beneath your hand. And as you step through, the air changes immediately, as though you have crossed an invisible threshold between holding and release, between the quiet containment of the archives and something softer, more open. And you find yourself standing beneath the open sky, in a hidden courtyard resting at the very center of the library. It is midnight. The world beyond the walls feels distant now, irrelevant, as if the night itself has been gathered inward and placed here for safekeeping. And the only light that remains comes from the moon, large, silver, and unhurried, hanging low above the open space, its reflection pooled in the still water at the courtyard's heart. The stone beneath your feet retains the memory of warmth from the day, but the air is cool, carrying a faint, humid softness that brushes against your skin. And as you inhale, the breath feels different here. Lighter, moister, touched with water and bloom rather than paper and wood. At the center of the courtyard, a small fountain waits. It does not rush. It does not spray. It simply allows water to fall. A single drop forms, gathers, releases. Plink. The sound is clear and round, like glass being touched gently with a fingertip, and as the drop meets the stone basin below, it becomes a ripple, widening outward in perfect circles, expanding, thinning, dissolving into stillness before the next drop arrives. Plink. Ripple. Silence. The rhythm is slow enough to follow without effort, slow enough that your breathing naturally begins to mirror it. The inhale forming, the exhale releasing, the body recognizing the pattern and settling into it as though it has been waiting all evening for this precise tempo. The basin is carved from pale stone, smooth at the edges, darkened slightly where water has traced the same path for years, perhaps centuries, and the surface of the pool holds the moon without distortion. A silver disc resting gently in liquid obsidian, trembling only when a drop disturbs it, then returning to calm. Around the fountain, night-blooming flowers open quietly. Jasmine releases its scent in measured waves, soft and luminous, not sharp, not overwhelming, only present enough to be noticed when you breathe slowly. And nearby the night-blooming cereus unfurls pale petals that seem almost unreal in the moonlight. Flowers that exist only for these dark hours, opening without audience, without urgency, their fragrance cool and perfumed, as though the night itself has chosen to breathe through them. The air feels perfumed and cool, not heavy, not damp, just enough humidity to soften the edges of the moment. A gentle mist lingering near the fountain, brushing against your wrists and ankles, cooling the skin where the dry library air once rested. And the contrast is soothing rather than startling, like stepping into shade after a long, warm day. Moonlight spills across the courtyard with patience. It touches the leaves first, tracing their shapes in silver, outlining edges, turning veins into delicate maps of light. And then it drifts lower, settling onto the surface of the water, where it stretches and contracts with each ripple, never breaking, only reshaping itself again and again. The lily pads float quietly in the pond, broad and still, their surfaces catching the moon's glow and holding it like thin sheets of pearl. And where the light meets the water, the pads appear to hover, suspended between liquid and air, neither fully solid nor fully reflected, simply present. Stone benches line the edges of the courtyard, carved from marble that has cooled beneath the open sky, and where the moonlight reaches them, the stone transforms, becoming luminous, pale blocks of ice-like glow, solid yet ethereal, their edges softened by shadow, their surfaces smooth and inviting. The fountain continues. Plink, ripple, glass. The sound travels only a short distance before being absorbed by the open air, never echoing, never repeating beyond its single expression, and that restraint makes it more calming, as though each sound is allowed to exist fully and then disappear without needing to be remembered. You walk slowly across the courtyard, your steps nearly silent on the stone, the night holding you without resistance, and as you move, the scent of jasmine follows gently, never clinging, only drifting, reminding you that some things are meant to be noticed briefly and then released. The moonlight touches your hands, your sleeves, your shoulders. It does not warm, but it does not chill either. It simply illuminates, revealing shape without judgment, and you feel seen without being examined, held in light without being asked to respond. The air here feels alive in a quiet way, threaded with moisture and scent, and the faintest coolness rising from the water. And as you breathe, the chest opens without effort, the breath deepening naturally, each inhale arriving like a wave, each exhale leaving like one, fluid and unforced. The courtyard feels timeless, not ancient in the way stone halls feel ancient, but eternal in the way water feels eternal, always moving, always returning, always the same and never identical. You pause near the fountain and watch the surface of the pool, noticing how the moon breaks into fragments with each ripple, then reforms again, whole and undisturbed, and something about that repetition eases a quiet place inside you. The reminder that disruption does not mean loss, that stillness can return again and again. Plink, ripple, shimmer. The mist near the fountain catches the moonlight and becomes visible for a moment, silver threads drifting upward, then dissolving, dew gathering lightly on stone and leaf, and you feel the coolness brush against your skin, a gentle touch that grounds you in the present, here and now, under open sky. Eventually, you find yourself drawn toward one of the marble benches. You sit. The stone is cool beneath you, firm and steady, a grounding presence after the softness of air and water. And as you settle, your body relaxes into the support without thinking, without adjusting, as if it knows instinctively that this place is safe. From here, the courtyard opens upward. Beyond the walls, you can see the astronomy tower rising quietly against the night, its silhouette dark and calm, a vertical line pointing gently toward the stars, waiting without insistence, its presence promising observation rather than action, understanding rather than effort. You look up. The moon hangs above, silver and complete. The fountain continues its slow conversation with the stone. Plink, ripple, glass. The flowers breathe. The mist cools. The night holds everything in balance. For now, there is nothing more to do. No path to follow. No threshold to cross. You sit on the cool marble bench, breathing in the perfumed air, listening to water meet stone, watching moonlight move across leaves, and water and stone, and letting the liquid night settle fully around you, smooth and unbroken, carrying you gently toward rest. Chapter 7. The Astronomy Tower, the Weightless Sky. The ascent begins without ceremony. There is no threshold that announces the leaving of the ground floor. No sudden awareness that you are rising above the city. Only the gentle curve of stone, spiraling upward with a patience that suggests it has always known where it is going. The staircase does not hurry. It does not demand attention. It invites you into rhythm. Each step bears the subtle signature of time. The center of every stone is worn smooth, hollowed by centuries of passage. The quiet erosion left by scholars who climb these stairs, not for urgency, but for understanding. Their footsteps have softened the stone, rounding it into something almost tender beneath your feet. As you climb, your body finds an effortless cadence. Breath deepens, shoulders release. The staircase seems to lift you rather than challenge you, carrying you higher with a steady certainty. With each turn of the spiral, the sounds of the city loosen their grip. Conversations blur, distances stretch, the weight of immediacy begins to thin. At a certain height, you realize you are no longer measuring progress. There is no counting of steps, no awareness of how far you have come or how far remains. The staircase becomes a meditation, a slow orbit around a still center. You are moving, but nothing inside you feels pulled forward. The climb is no longer effort, it is participation. The air changes. It grows cooler, not with cold, but with clarity. Each breath feels lighter, as though it contains more space than before. You sense the city below, not as something left behind, but as something gently held at a distance. Problems remain intact, but they have lost their density. They no longer press against you. The spiral opens. You emerge onto a circular balcony, wide and calm, suspended above the city like a held breath. The Egyptian night receives you without spectacle. The sky stretches vast and deep, a gradient of indigo fading into black, scattered with stars that do not shimmer for attention. They exist quietly, confidently, fixed in their ancient patience. Your gaze drifts outward. Far in the distance, the Pharaoh's lighthouse sweeps its light across the Mediterranean Sea. The beam rotates in a slow rhythmic pulse. Not urgent, not insistent. Each pass of light feels deliberate, almost ceremonial. It does not command the darkness to retreat. It simply offers presence. Below, the sea reflects nothing clearly. Light touches the surface and dissolves into motion, spreading thin across the water before disappearing entirely. Watching it, you feel a surprising relief. The ocean does not cling to illumination. It allows light to come and go without needing to preserve it. Near the edge of the balcony stand the instruments. Bronze armillary spheres rest in quiet arrangement, their interlocking rings representing the heavens. Celestial paths traced not by control, but by repetition and trust. Polished bronze catches the starlight in muted arcs, each ring intersecting another without friction. You place your hand against the metal. It is cool, solid, steady. The bronze does not respond to urgency or emotion. It has endured by remaining true to its form. Your fingers trace one ring, then another, following the geometry of orbit and alignment. You notice how complexity exists here without chaos, how movement is implied without motion. Nothing strains, nothing rushes, everything belongs. A high wind moves across the balcony, but it carries no sound from the city. No voices rise to meet you, no commerce, no unfinished conversations. Only the faint scent of salt and something vast, the clean, impersonal smell of open space. The wind does not push, it lifts. Standing here, you feel an unfamiliar spaciousness within yourself. Thoughts widen rather than multiply. Concerns that once felt towering now appear smaller, not because they were unimportant, but because they were never meant to be carried so close to the heart. You understand something quietly. Elevation is not escape, it is perspective. From this height, nothing below is wrong, and nothing needs to be solved from here. The tower offers no answers, only proportion. You are reminded that distance does not diminish care, it clarifies it. The sky above feels weightless, not empty, expansive. A ceiling without pressure, a vastness that asks nothing and offers everything. The stars do not demand interpretation. They exist in their own certainty, inviting you to do the same. Time stretches, moments lengthen without effort. You remain on the balcony not because you are searching for insight, but because stillness feels complete. The instruments, the wind, the distant lighthouse, all of it forms a quiet constellation of reassurance. Eventually, the signal to return arrives without insistence. There is no reluctance, no sense of loss. You turn back toward the spiral staircase with the calm understanding that descent is not departure. It is continuation. The stairs receive you again, familiar and steady. As you begin the slow walk downward, the tower does not collapse behind you. The perspective you gain does not vanish. It travels with you, settling gently into your awareness. Each step downward feels grounded, not heavy. You carry no answers, only spaciousness. And that, you realize, is enough. The staircase curves once more, guiding you back toward the philosopher's walk, toward reflection, movement, and the living world below. You return not changed, but recalibrated. The sky remains above you. The tower remains behind you, but the weightlessness stays. Chapter 7. The Astronomy Tower, the Weightless Sky. The ascent begins without ceremony. There is no threshold that announces the leaving of the ground floor. No sudden awareness that you are rising above the city. Only the gentle curve of stone, spiraling upward with a patience that suggests it has always known where it is going. The staircase does not hurry. It does not demand attention. It invites you into rhythm. Each step bears the subtle signature of time. The center of every stone is worn smooth, hollowed by centuries of passage. The quiet erosion left by scholars who climb these stairs, not for urgency, but for understanding. Their footsteps have softened the stone, rounding it into something almost tender beneath your feet. As you climb, your body finds an effortless cadence. Breath deepens, shoulders release. The staircase seems to lift you rather than challenge you, carrying you higher with a steady certainty. With each turn of the spiral, the sounds of the city loosen their grip. Conversations blur, distances stretch, the weight of immediacy begins to thin. At a certain height, you realize you are no longer measuring progress. There is no counting of steps, no awareness of how far you have come or how far remains. The staircase becomes a meditation, a slow orbit around a still center. You are moving, but nothing inside you feels pulled forward. The climb is no longer effort, it is participation. The air changes. It grows cooler, not with cold, but with clarity. Each breath feels lighter, as though it contains more space than before. You sense the city below, not as something left behind, but as something gently held at a distance. Problems remain intact, but they have lost their density. They no longer press against you. The spiral opens. You emerge onto a circular balcony, wide and calm, suspended above the city like a held breath. The Egyptian night receives you without spectacle. The sky stretches vast and deep, a gradient of indigo fading into black, scattered with stars that do not shimmer for attention. They exist quietly, confidently, fixed in their ancient patience. Your gaze drifts outward. Far in the distance, the Pharaoh's lighthouse sweeps its light across the Mediterranean Sea. The beam rotates in a slow rhythmic pulse. Not urgent, not insistent, Each pass of light feels deliberate, almost ceremonial. It does not command the darkness to retreat. It simply offers presence. Below, the sea reflects nothing clearly. Light touches the surface and dissolves into motion, spreading thin across the water before disappearing entirely. Watching it, you feel a surprising relief. The ocean does not cling to illumination. It allows light to come and go without needing to preserve it. Near the edge of the balcony stand the instruments. Bronze armillary spheres rest in quiet arrangement, their interlocking rings representing the heavens. Celestial paths traced not by control, but by repetition and trust. Polished bronze catches the starlight in muted arcs, each ring intersecting another without friction. You place your hand against the metal. It is cool, solid, steady. The bronze does not respond to urgency or emotion. It has endured by remaining true to its form. Your fingers trace one ring, then another, following the geometry of orbit and alignment. You notice how complexity exists here without chaos, how movement is implied without motion. Nothing strains, nothing rushes, everything belongs. A high wind moves across the balcony, but it carries no sound from the city. No voices rise to meet you, no commerce, no unfinished conversations. Only the faint scent of salt and something vast, the clean, impersonal smell of open space. The wind does not push. It lifts. Standing here, you feel an unfamiliar spaciousness within yourself. Thoughts widen rather than multiply. Concerns that once felt towering now appear smaller, not because they were unimportant, but because they were never meant to be carried so close to the heart. You understand something quietly. Elevation is not escape. It is perspective. From this height, nothing below is wrong, and nothing needs to be solved from here. The tower offers no answers, only proportion. You are reminded that distance does not diminish care. It clarifies it. The sky above feels weightless, not empty, expansive. A ceiling without pressure, a vastness that asks nothing and offers everything. The stars do not demand interpretation. They exist in their own certainty, inviting you to do the same. Time stretches, moments lengthen without effort. You remain on the balcony not because you are searching for insight, but because stillness feels complete. The instruments, the wind, the distant lighthouse, all of it forms a quiet constellation of reassurance. Eventually, the signal to return arrives without insistence. There is no reluctance, no sense of loss. You turn back toward the spiral staircase with the calm understanding that descent is not departure. It is continuation. The stairs receive you again, familiar and steady. As you begin the slow walk downward, the tower does not collapse behind you. The perspective you gain does not vanish. It travels with you, settling gently into your awareness. Each step downward feels grounded, not heavy. You carry no answers, only spaciousness. And that, you realize, is enough. The staircase curves once more, guiding you back toward the philosopher's walk, toward reflection, movement, and the living world below. You return not changed, but recalibrated. The sky remains above you. The tower remains behind you, but the weightlessness stays. Chapter 8. The Philosopher's Walk. The Weight of Wisdom. The descent from the astronomy tower is unhurried. Stone gives way to stone as the spiral loosens its hold, and the staircase opens into a long, wide corridor that stretches forward with quiet authority. This is not a place of ascent or ambition. It is a place of lineage, of accumulation, of thoughts carried carefully across time. The corridor is broad enough to feel ceremonial, yet intimate enough to invite reflection. Life-sized marble statues line both sides, standing at measured intervals. Philosophers, poets, scientists. Their forms etched not with spectacle, but with reverence. Each figure occupies its space without urgency, as though aware that it will not be passing through. Low-burning oil lamps rest in shallow alcoves along the walls. Their flames are steady and patient, casting a warm, amber glow that pulls gently across the smooth stone floor. The light does not conquer the shadows. It dances with them. Together, they create a rhythm that feels ancient and intentional. You begin to walk. Your footsteps are soft, absorbed by the stone beneath you. In the quiet, your own breathing becomes audible, slow, rhythmic, anchoring. Each inhale feels deliberate. Each exhale releases something unnamed. The sound is not intrusive. It is companionable. As you pass the first statues, you notice their faces. Their eyes are sightless, carved in gentle repose. Their expressions are calm, neither stern nor smiling. It is as if they are listening inward, turned towards something vast and unresolved. There is peace here, not the peace of certainty, but the peace of acceptance. These thinkers lived thousands of years ago, and yet, the weight they carry is not heavy. The lamp's orange light plays across the marble, tracing the folds of carved robes, the subtle tension of hands resting at the waist, the quiet dignity of a bowed head. Shadows stretch and retreat along the floor, lengthening with each flicker of flame, then dissolving again. The corridor itself seems to breathe. You slow your pace. Nothing in this hall rewards urgency. The statues do not compete for attention. Each one stands secure in its place within a greater continuum. No single figure defines the space. It is the collective presence that gives the corridor its gravity. As you walk, a realization settles gently. Wisdom does not shout. It accumulates. It gathers in layers, conversation by conversation, question by question, until it becomes something stable enough to rest beside. The thinkers surrounding you are remembered not because they solved life, but because they stayed with it. They asked better questions and allowed those questions to remain open. The flickering lamps seem to echo this truth. Their light is imperfect. It wavers, it trembles, and yet it is enough to illuminate the path, enough to reveal texture and depth without flattening mystery. The corridor does not ask for clarity. It offers presence. Your breath aligns with your steps. Inhale, footstep, exhale, footstep. The sound of movement becomes meditative, a gentle reminder that you are part of this lineage too, not in fame or marble, but in participation, in the willingness to reflect, in the courage to pause, in the patience to listen. Some statues hold scrolls etched with symbols softened by time. Others stand empty-handed, their knowledge implied rather than displayed. Some faces are youthful, their features smooth and unlined. Others bear the softened contours of age. All share the same stillness, the calm that comes from knowing that no single lifetime completes the work. The corridor stretches on, and still the figures remain patient. You sense that many have walked here before you. Scholars, seekers, wanderers, each carrying their own questions, each leaving behind a subtle imprint of thought. The stone floor reflects faint traces of flame, blurred by centuries of footsteps. The hallway remembers without clinging. The weight of wisdom is not pressure, it is density. It is the quiet understanding that knowledge gains gravity only when it is carried with humility. That insight matures when it is allowed to settle, rather than forced into declaration. The statues do not instruct you, they accompany you. The shadows deepen as you move forward. Light and darkness share the corridor without conflict. The lamps neither chase nor banish the dark. Instead, they reveal it gently, allowing depth to remain intact. You realize that wisdom too contains shadow, not as something to be eliminated, but as something to be respected. Your breathing slows further. In this silence, there is no audience, no performance, no need to explain yourself. The corridor offers permission to be unfinished. You pass a statue whose face seems almost familiar. The features are worn smooth, softened by centuries of observation. The eyes are closed, not in sleep, but in contemplation. You feel no urge to name this figure. Labels feel unnecessary here. Names fade. Essence remains. The corridor continues, stately and composed. Each lamp burns low and steady, its flame protected from drafts, its light measured and intentional. You notice how the carved marble ropes at the statue's sides catch the glow, each twist etched with care. Shadows coil and uncoil across the stone floor, mirroring the slow unraveling of thought. The sound of your footsteps becomes softer still. There is a sense of being held, not restrained, but supported. The hall does not rush you forward. It allows you to arrive. As you walk, another truth emerges. Wisdom is not urgency. Wisdom is timing. It knows when to speak and when to remain silent. It understands that restraint is not absence, but refinement. The figures around you embody this understanding. They have endured not by insisting, but by remaining available. The air shifts subtly as you near the end of the corridor. It grows heavier, not oppressive, but weighted with intention. The lamp's glow softens, their light absorbed rather than reflected. Ahead, a heavy velvet curtain hangs across the final threshold. Its fabric is deep and dark, drinking in the amber light. The folds are thick, deliberate, unmoving. You slow to a near stop. This is not an ending. It is a pause. Behind the curtain lies the inner sanctum, not a place of revelation, but of integration. What waits beyond does not require preparation, only readiness. The corridor has done its work quietly, without spectacle. You stand and breathe. The statues remain behind you, their presence steady and unintrusive. The lamps continue to flicker, their flames unwavering in their restraint. The corridor holds, as it always has. The weight you feel now is not burden. It is inheritance. The accumulated wisdom of countless lives does not press upon you. It steadies you. It reminds you that you are not late. You are not behind. You are part of a long, thoughtful procession. You reach toward the curtain, not yet to open it, but to acknowledge it. And in that stillness you understand. The walk itself was the teaching. Chapter 9. The inner sanctum, the deepest silence. The curtain is heavy, thick velvet, royal blue, worn with age. Dust rests deep within the fibers, settled there patiently over centuries, as though the fabric itself has been breathing slowly, quietly, waiting. When you place your hands against it, the velvet yields with a resistance that feels intentional, not refusal, but gravity. This curtain is meant to slow you. You push forward. The moment the fabric parts, the world behind you falls away. Sound does not follow. It is swallowed whole, absorbed by the velvet as if it had never existed. Even the memory of noise seems to dissolve at the threshold. The curtain closes again behind you. Silence. Not the absence of sound, but the presence of quiet. You stand still. The room is small and circular, its boundaries close enough to be sensed without being seen. The walls curve inward gently, creating a feeling of enclosure without confinement. This is not a chamber meant for gathering. It is meant for holding. The air is ancient. It does not move. It does not stir. It feels layered, dense, as though each breath passes through time before it reaches your lungs. The scent is subtle but unmistakable. Dried herbs, resin, old parchment, mineral dust. the smell of preservation, of knowledge that has learned patience. You inhale slowly. The breath feels different here, heavier, deeper, as if the air itself has weight. Your feet sink into thick woven rugs that cover the stone floor entirely. There is no echo when you move, no footfall. The rugs swallow sound effortlessly, their fibers dense and forgiving. Each step feels cushioned, grounding, deliberate. The patterns beneath you are intricate, interlocking geometry softened by age. Floral motifs woven so many times, they now feel intuitive rather than decorative. Deep reds faded into rust, gold dulled into warmth, indigo darkened into something nearly black. The rugs do not display themselves, they serve. With every step, your body settles further into the space. Muscles soften, shoulders lower. The tension you did not realize you were carrying begins to loosen, as if the room were gently reminding you that effort is unnecessary here. Silence deepens. At first, your thoughts continue out of habit. Fragments, echoes, remnants of motion. But the room does not engage with them. It offers no surface for them to cling to. No reflection, no response. Gradually, the thoughts thin. They arrive less frequently. They depart more easily. Around the curved walls, shelves rise in careful arcs, built directly into the stone. They hold scrolls bound in muted cloth and aged leather. Their edges are uneven, their surfaces softened by time and careful handling. None are labeled. None are illuminated directly. They rest. This is not a place of study. It is a place of presence. You sense that these scrolls are not here to be consulted casually. They are not waiting to be opened. Their purpose is not consumption, but continuity. Proof that wisdom can exist without constant activation. Your attention is drawn inward. At the center of the room stands a low pedestal carved from stone, its surface worn smooth by centuries of stillness. Upon it rests a single scroll encased in gold. The casing is restrained, unadorned, precise. The gold has aged into something softer, less reflective, more reverent. It does not gleam. It glows faintly, as if remembering light rather than producing it. The surface holds the marks of time. Fine scratches, softened edges, a dull warmth that feels earned. Beneath it lies a velvet cushion, deep blue, its fabric compressed gently where the scroll has rested for generations. The cushion does not cradle, it supports. You do not wonder what the scroll contains. The room does not invite curiosity of that kind. Its beauty is physical, textural, complete. The scroll exists as an object of restraint. Knowledge preserved not through secrecy, but through respect. It does not ask to be opened. It asks to be acknowledged. The silence thickens again. Your breathing slows further, guided by the room rather than intention. Inhale, pause, exhale. The sound is barely perceptible. Even your breath seems to soften before it leaves you, as though the space were filtering it, refining it. Time begins to lose definition. Moments stretch without edges. There is no sense of before or after, only continuity. The room does not rush you toward insight. It does not offer revelation. It offers something rarer. Containment. The air feels cool against your skin now, though the temperature has not changed. It is the sensation of stillness itself. Unmoving, settled, undisturbed. This air has learned how to wait. Light enters the room almost imperceptibly, not from a visible source, but from somewhere above. Reflected, refracted, softened. It settles gently along the curved walls, revealing faint carvings etched directly into the stone. Symbols worn smooth by time, too softened to be read clearly, yet unmistakably intentional. These markings do not instruct, they witness. The gold casing catches a narrow thread of light, just enough to soften its edges. The glow is quiet, restrained, as if even the light understands it must not intrude. The scroll remains closed, perfectly complete in its silence. You realize something gently. Not everything that matters must be accessed. Some things remain sacred because they are left untouched. The rugs beneath your feet feel warmer now, insulating you fully from the stone below. Their woven fibers guide awareness downward, anchoring you into your body. The grounding is immediate and profound. You are not searching here. You are resting. The silence is no longer something you notice. It has become something you inhabit. Thoughts drift through occasionally, not looping, not sticky. They arrive like dust motes in still air, visible for a moment, then settling naturally. There is no urgency to resolve them, no impulse to organize. The room holds them without judgment. Around you, small objects emerge from shadow. Low stone bowls containing dried seeds, fragments of mineral, small bundles of herbs bound with twine. These items are not decorative. They are functional in a quieter way. They remind the body of earth, of cycles, of growth slowed into preservation. You notice now a shallow alcove along the curved wall, partially hidden from the center. Within it, shelves hold bundles of dried plants, stems, leaves, flowers preserved carefully, their colors muted but intact. Sage, thyme, something bitter and unfamiliar. Their scent is grounding, medicinal, faintly sweet. The smell anchors you fully into the present moment, pulling awareness out of abstraction and into sensation. Life preserved through patience, not forced, not extracted, simply allowed to become what it is over time. You remain still, breathing, held. The silence does not deepen further. It does not need to. It is complete. Chapter 10. The Botanical Alcove. The listener leaves the scrolls behind. The last corridor of written knowledge softens into shadow. A stone gives way to something quieter, older, and more forgiving. The echo of footsteps fades almost immediately, as if the walls themselves have learned how to listen rather than repeat. A small side room opens gently to the right. Not announced, not grand, but waiting, like a held breath finally released. This is the botanical alcove. The air changes first. It is warmer here, yet somehow cooler on the skin, infused with a living stillness that carries the memory of earth after rain. The scent arrives in layers, unfolding slowly, rather than demanding attention. There is lavender first, soft, herbal, unmistakably calming, followed by the dry clarity of sage and the faint, honeyed sweetness of chamomile. Together, they create a healing fragrance of the earth, an infusion shaped by time rather than intention. The listener pauses at the threshold, not from hesitation, but because the body seems to understand that rushing would be inappropriate. This is a room that asks for presence. Above, bundles of herbs hang from the rafters. Lavender stems are tied with thin lengths of twine, their purple now faded into silvery blue, the blossoms brittle yet elegant. In the moonlight that slips through a narrow high window, each bundle gleams softly, as though dusted with frost. Sage leaves curl inward upon themselves, pale and velvety, their edges softened by drying. Chamomile flowers, small and sun-like even in their withered state, dot the ceiling with muted gold. They sway almost imperceptibly, not from movement within the room, but from the slow breath of the building itself. The herbs creak faintly where twine meets wood, a quiet sound like an old house settling into comfort. Their shadows drift across the walls, elongated and tender, creating patterns that feel less like decoration and more like a memory of fields and open skies. The walls are lined with terracotta jars. They sit in neat, humble rows, each vessel slightly different from the next. Some are round-bellied and wide-mouthed, others tall and narrow, their clay surfaces etched with faint fingerprints left behind by hands long gone. The terracotta is cool to the touch, rough and grounding beneath the listener's fingertips. Tiny imperfections catch the skin, small chips, uneven rims, each one a reminder that healing has never required perfection. One jar holds crushed rose petals. When the lid is lifted, the scent rises immediately, floral, deep, and faintly sweet, carrying both softness and resilience. The petals inside are darkened now, no longer pink but a dusky crimson, as though holding the memory of blooming rather than the bloom itself. Another jar contains frankincense resin, small amber-like fragments that glisten faintly in the low light. Its aroma is warm and resinous, sacred without being solemn, grounding without being heavy. Together, the jars form a quiet library of remedies. This is knowledge passed not through ink and parchment, but through touch, scent, and patient observation. Each container represents generations of listening to the body, to the land, to the subtle language of plants. There are no labels here. The knowledge lives in memory and practice, in the slow repetition of care. A small window rests high on the far wall. It is narrow and arched, just wide enough to invite the night air inside. Through it, the moon casts a pale beam across the floor, illuminating dust motes that drift lazily, like pollen suspended in time. From the opening comes the sound of wind, soft, high, and melodic. It whistles gently through the stone, like a distant flute played by unseen hands. The sound does not interrupt the silence. It becomes part of it. The listener notices their breathing before they consciously change it. Each inhale grows deeper, fuller, drawn effortlessly into the lungs by the herbal air. Each exhale releases something subtle but persistent, a tension held so long it had almost become familiar. The shoulders drop, the jaw softens, the space behind the eyes clears, as if a veil has been gently lifted. The body understands what the mind does not need to analyze. Here, there is nothing to solve. The scents work quietly, like old friends who know exactly where to place their hands. Lavender smooths the nervous edges. Sage clears lingering heaviness. Chamomile settles the restless flutter beneath the ribs. Together, they move through the body as an infusion. Slow, deliberate, nurturing. Time loosens its grip. The listener walks further into the alcove, footsteps muted by the stone floor worn smooth by centuries of use. A simple wooden table rests in the center of the room. Its surface bears the marks of preparation. Small stains from oils, faint scratches from grinding tools, rings left by clay cups cooling after use. Mortar and pestle sit nearby, dusted with fine herbal residue, ready but unhurried. Nothing here demands urgency. The listener rests a hand on the table, feeling the grain of the wood beneath their palm. It is warm, familiar, grounding. The room seems to hum, not audibly, but with a low, steady presence, like the quiet reassurance of the earth itself. Breathing deepens again. With each inhale, the chest expands comfortably. With each exhale, the body releases another layer of holding. Muscles soften along the spine. The belly loosens. Even the feet feel lighter, more rooted and more free at the same time. This is restoration. Not dramatic, not immediate, but cumulative and kind. The hanging herbs overhead seem to watch, their dried leaves whispering faintly as the air shifts. The jars remain still, patient. The wind continues its gentle song through the window, a reminder that the world beyond this room is vast and breathing, but does not intrude. For a moment, long or short, it does not matter. The listener simply exists. No past, no future. only the present sensation of being held by scent, sound, and silence. Eventually, without announcement, the moment completes itself. The listener feels ready to move again, not because the room releases them, but because it has given what was needed. One final breath is drawn in deeply, filling the lungs with lavender and clay and night air. One final exhale carries gratitude, though no words are spoken. The listener steps back toward the doorway. As they leave the botanical alcove, the scents linger gently, clinging like a soft shawl around the shoulders. The stone corridor beyond feels different now, less imposing, more open. The body carries the room within it, an inner garden preserved. Ahead, a doorway opens onto light. The listener steps forward and emerges onto a high balcony overlooking the sea. Moonlight stretches across the water in a long silver path, shimmering with quiet promise. The air here is cool and expansive, filled with salt and possibility. Behind them, the botanical alcove rests in silence. Within them, its healing fragrance remains. And with steady breath and softened heart, the listener stands at the edge of the world, restored, grounded, and ready for the next transition. Chapter 11. The Twilight Balcony. The listener steps forward. Stone beneath their feet shifts from the warmth of the interior to the cool certainty of the open air. And in that single transition, threshold to horizon, the world seems to widen all at once, expanding beyond walls, beyond thought, beyond the quiet containment of rooms, into something vast and endlessly breathing. They are standing on a high, white stone balcony overlooking the Mediterranean Sea. Behind them, the great structure rises in patient silence, its presence felt more than seen now, like a keeper of memory that knows when to release and when to remain. Ahead, the ocean stretches outward, dark and luminous, its surface reflecting the last traces of twilight, as though the sky has poured itself gently into the water and decided to stay. The horizon is not a line, it is a meeting. Sky and sea touch without pressure, without effort, joined in a way that feels ancient and ongoing, as if they have always known one another and always will. The listener's eyes follow that meeting point, and something inside them loosens further, recognizing a scale that makes worry feel small without making the self feel insignificant. The lighthouse stands to the side, tall and steady. Pharos, its great beam turns slowly, deliberately, casting a wide arc of light across the obsidian waves. Each sweep is unhurried, measured, like a slow heartbeat echoing across the water. Light moves, pauses, disappears, then returns again. Reliable, rhythmic, timeless. Pulse. The listener feels it not only with their eyes, but with their body. The beam's rhythm seems to reach inward, sinking gently with breath and heartbeat alike. Inhale. The light moves outward. Exhale. It passes on, making room for darkness without fear. Nothing here rushes. The sea air rises to meet the balcony, carrying salt water and mist. It brushes against the listener's skin with a cool, damp touch. Refreshing, grounding, alive. Fine droplets cling briefly to hair and clothing, catching the faint glow of the lighthouse before dissolving again, as though the sea itself is reaching up to say hello, and then retreating respectfully. The scent is unmistakable. Salt, mineral, open water. It fills the lungs deeply, expanding the chest with each slow breath, carrying away the last remnants of contained air from interior spaces. The listener exhales, and the sound is almost lost beneath the hush of the waves far below. The Mediterranean does not crash here. It breathes. Water laps against the harbour walls in a low, steady rhythm, soft, repetitive, endlessly patient. The sound is neither loud nor silent, but perfectly balanced, like the breath of the world itself, in and out, in and out, a sound that has existed long before language and will continue long after it. The listener leans forward slightly, resting their hands on the balcony railing. The marble is cool and smooth beneath their palms, solid and reassuring. It holds the night's chill without hostility, offering stability rather than shock. Fingers curl naturally around its edge, and the listener feels how firmly it is anchored, how safe it is to lean here, to trust the stone to hold them while they look outward into immensity. This is not a place of falling. This is a place of witnessing. The lighthouse beam sweeps again, passing over the water, briefly illuminating the gentle undulation of waves before letting them return to shadow. Each pass reveals a different texture. Ripples, swells, quiet movement layered upon quiet movement, all flowing in patterns too vast to count and too consistent to doubt. Timelessness settles in. The listener notices how the body responds without instruction. Shoulders soften. The spine lengthens naturally. The jaw releases. Breathing slows, deepens, matches the rhythm offered by sea and light alike. There is nothing to solve here, only rhythm. The horizon stretches endlessly, a reminder that not all paths need destinations, that some things exist simply to continue. The listener's gaze drifts across the water, then upward into the deepening indigo of the sky, where the first stars have begun to appear. Small, distant, unwavering. Each star holds its place. Each wave keeps its rhythm. The lighthouse continues its pulse. The listener becomes aware of a quiet truth settling gently into the body. Nothing is being asked of them in this moment except to be here, to breathe, to witness, to allow the vastness to exist without needing to understand it. Another wave breathes against the harbour wall below. Another sweep of light crosses the sea. The night mist cools the skin just enough to keep the listener present, grounded in sensation rather than thought. The stone beneath their hands remains steady, unchanged. A reminder that even in the presence of endless movement, there is always something that holds. Time stretches, or perhaps it dissolves. The listener no longer counts breaths, no longer marks seconds. The body has surrendered to rhythm, to the natural undulation that requires no effort to maintain. Each inhale is received, each exhale is released. Nothing lingers longer than it should. The lighthouse beam passes again, slower than memory, faster than thought. Pulse. The sea answers with its hush. Pulse. The body answers with breath. The listener's eyelids grow heavy, not from exhaustion, but from trust. The world has proven itself steady enough to rest within. The balcony, the stone, the sea, the light, all continue without needing attention, without needing management. The listener knows now that it is safe to let go. Hands remain on the cool marble railing for a moment longer, feeling its solidity, its promise. Then fingers loosen, arms resting at the sides, the body supported fully by its own balance, by the ground beneath it, by the rhythm that has carried it here. The final sweep of the lighthouse light crosses the water once more, slow and wide, before moving on. The sea breathes, the horizon holds. The listener draws one last deep breath of saltwater air, feeling it fill the lungs completely, then releases it gently, completely, without resistance. And as the eyes begin to close, the rhythm remains, steady, vast, timeless, carrying the listener softly towards sleep, where the sea continues its endless motion and the light continues its watch, long after consciousness drifts into rest. Chapter 12. The Dreamer's Departure. The listener remains on the balcony, eyes closed now. What was once seen is no longer needed, and the physical world, stone, sea, sky, tower, begins to loosen its edges, not disappearing suddenly, but receding gently, like a tide pulling back from shore without urgency. without loss. The lighthouse still turns somewhere in the distance, but its beam is softer now. The pulse that once swept clearly across the waves grows slower, fainter, as though heard from farther away or remembered rather than witnessed. The sound of its mechanism blends into the night air, no longer distinct, no longer separate from the hush of the sea. The world does not end. It dissolves. The scent of herbs, lavender, sage, chamomile, returns briefly, faint and comforting, like the echo of a place already visited, not strong enough to focus on, not sharp enough to name, just a gentle trace, drifting through awareness like a half-remembered dream that feels important without needing explanation. Breathing becomes the center. In, out, in, out. The listener's body begins to notice its own weight. Arms grow heavy first, not stiff, not numb, just heavy, like warm stone resting in sunlight all day, and now holding that warmth deep within. The shoulders release downward, surrendering the effort of holding themselves upright. Muscles soften, lengthen, and settle exactly where they are meant to be. Hands feel heavier, fingers loosen. There is no need to grip anything anymore. The balcony railing, the stone, the safety they offered, all of it remains even as attention drifts away from it. The body remembers that it is supported, and that memory is enough. The weight continues to spread. Down the arms, into the chest, across the back. The spine no longer feels like something that must be held in place. It simply exists, aligned without effort, supported by breath and gravity working together. The sea breathes below. The sound is quieter now. Still present, still rhythmic, but distant, like waves heard through layers of sleep. The hush of water against stone becomes part of the listener's own breathing, indistinguishable from it, until it is impossible to tell where one ends and the other begins. The legs grow heavy, thighs relax, knees soften, calves sink. Feet feel warm, anchored, as though resting on stone that has known countless footsteps and remembers each one kindly. There is no tension left in the lower body, no need to move, no need to adjust. Just wait, pleasant, grounded, safe. The world continues to fade, not because it is being taken away, but because it has done its work. The lighthouse pulse fades into a memory of a rhythm, then into the idea of a rhythm, then into nothing at all. The scent of salt water thins, replaced by the neutral comfort of breath, moving slowly through the body. In, out, slower now, deeper. Each breath carries the listener further inward, away from edges and definitions, toward a softer place where thoughts lose their shape before they even form. The darkness behind the eyelids grows richer. Not empty, not frightening, but full, like a velvet blanket settling gently over awareness. It is warm and deep and endless, wrapping from the outside in and from the inside out, until there is no distinction between the listener and the dark at all. The darkness does not press, it cradles. Thoughts slow, then thin, then drift away entirely. Any remaining tension dissolves into the heaviness of the body, sinking down deeper and deeper until it is no longer felt at all. There is nothing left to do, nothing left to follow, nothing left to understand. Only the simple rhythm of breath remains. In, out, in, out, slower, deeper. Peace spreads through the body like warmth through stone, gradual, inevitable, complete. The mind no longer reaches outward. It rests inward, floating gently on the steady tide of breath. The sea is still there, but it no longer needs attention. Its rhythm continues on its own, ancient and patient, carrying the listener without effort, without sound, without form. The body sinks further, heavy, warm, supported. Every part of the listener is now resting, fully, completely, without resistance. There is no boundary between waking and sleep anymore, only a soft overlap where awareness dims and comfort deepens. Breath slows again, deeper still. The darkness wraps closer, the velvet blanket settles, peace expands. Nothing pulls, nothing pushes. The listener drifts, sinks, deeper, heavier, calmer. The last traces of the world dissolve entirely, leaving only breath, and then even that begins to fade. There is only rest now, only quiet, only peace. Drift, sink, deeper, heavier, peace, sleep.